There is a contemporary ring to all the scenarios described by the first and third readings today. They sound so real and current, they could as well be said of what goes on in people's lives all over. The references to cheating on the side, dishonesty, to a little manipulation with the figures, a minute adjustment with the scales, and putting to use one's foresight, practical wisdom, and abilities to get maximum advantage for oneself. They sound so realistic and so contemporary that one is tempted to ask, so what's wrong with being smart and using one's talents to gain personal advantage? One even feels affirmed when one realizes that in the gospel parable, the Lord recounts how the master even commended that dishonest steward for acting prudently. One initially gets the impression that for so long as one prudently thinks and plans ahead for one's future, one is simply putting to good use his business and managerial skills, and therefore is worthy of praise. For the children of this world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. But wait a second. As is true of all parables, the illustration does not constitute the fullness of the message. The message comes from the totality and not from an isolated portion of the text, placed alongside the condemnation of the prophet Amos on those who trample upon the needy and destroy the poor of the land, the mendacious and cheating merchants of his times. We have here in the gospel a case of a steward who squanders his master's property, but who mobilizes all his inner resources, including his practical wisdom, when his pocketbook and financial future was at stake. The gospel commends him for being smart and alert to conditions that may spell good or harm to his personal concerns. The same gospel, however, condemns the smart alecky, selfish, and insensitive steward who uses all his abilities only for his own sake, to the total disregard of others' benefit, including that of his master. Now, this really sounds so contemporary and so real. It also sounds so personal and so true for everyone. For in truth, in all honesty, in the secrecy of our own hearts alone with the God we claim we believe in, can we ever claim we have not acted at any given time in the past in a similar fashion as the dishonest steward? Can we honestly take exception to the rampant practice of using what we know and capitalizing on what others may not know to gain unfair advantage over others? How many unsuspecting clients have been victimized by the so-called fine print in contracts? Even TV commercials portray the glorified cheating that takes place in the marketplace. How many of us have not fallen into the temptation of not telling the whole truth, when doing so would be favorable to us and our concerns? Examples abound. Examples of wisdom used for one's benefit. Examples of prudence and wisdom gone wrong. Today's readings give us a context for the same wisdom used properly and well, the sort of wisdom that would merit total commendation instead of condemnation. They give a call not to the surreptitious use of wisdom for one's dark and hidden motives, but that which is worthy of the children of the light. We are exhorted to use our talents and abilities, not only for self-serving interests, but also for the interests of others, of the common good, above all, that of God. Wisdom used surreptitiously for selfish ends is wisdom gone wrong, and is proper of those who prefer to live in the dark and not in the light. Contemporary moral reflection has a word for this, the sin of manipulation. It is that sin very common in our days that capitalizes on others' ignorance and one's own information-rich position to pull a fast one on others and gain unfair advantage over others. This is practical wisdom used solely for one's own practical ends. But today's readings also give us the wider context in which to put our practical wisdom to good use. the arena of the common good, the good of society, the good of everyone in the same society. St. Paul admonishes us, I ask that supplications, prayers, petitions, and thanksgiving be offered for everyone, for kings and for all in authority, that we may lead a quiet and tranquil life in all devotion and dignity. It is interesting that Paul singles out specially those in authority. Yes, we do need to pray for those who live out in the open, as it were, those who live in glass cages who, by their positions, are living their lives under the scrutiny of the public gaze. We do need to pray for political leaders. They are in a position either to use practical wisdom for themselves or for the good of whom they claim to serve. In the Philippine context, with corruption institutionally built into the system at all levels, both local and national, it is most difficult not to be tainted by high-profile crimes that are never prosecuted and for which no one, at least openly, feels guilty of. We ought to pray for church leaders, the men of the cloth, who, caught as they are in the trimmings and trappings of power and authority, may lose touch of the concerns of those whom the responsorial psalm refers to as the lowly and those in the dunghill. We ought to pray for ourselves too, that in our legitimate quest for material prosperity and financial security, we may never lose sight of our sense of priorities. We pray for ourselves who are caught up in the concerns of daily life, that we may keep in mind that the dishonest steward's greatest mistake really had to do with not acknowledging who the real master was. He had a master who paid him his legitimate wages, who even praised him for his being smart and wise, who only had good words for him, who knew exactly what to do in order to safeguard his financial future. He managed his affairs well. He was a darn good financial analyst and investor. Wall Street would benignly look at him and glowingly praise him in his fearless selfish forecasts. The Apprentice reality show would most likely hire him. His mistake, though, was simply this. Ultimately, he did not work with his master's good in mind. He worked for himself. His master was his own welfare, his own gain. His master really was Mammon. He had practical wisdom. Kudos to that. But he missed the calling that transcended such worldly wisdom, the calling to be part of the children of light. In the end, it was a case of wisdom gone wrong, priorities skewed, motives forked, and allegiances misplaced. For you cannot serve God and Mammon. Thank you, my dear friends, and God bless you.